Hi there, Jeff Lerner here, and welcome to this episode of the Millionaire Secrets show. I appreciate you viewing or perhaps listening if you're listening on the podcast platforms. I just want to do something a little different this episode. First of all, the whole episode is different because I'm not interviewing a multimillionaire entrepreneur. I'm actually having a conversation with my wife, Jaqueline. Because the episode's a little different, I wanted to actually create this little intro to kind of introduce and give some context on why I decided to have this conversation with my wife. It's not just a vanity, let me bring my wife on my show kind of thing. Here's the thing, I've been creating content online, trying to help people and steer people in the direction of, maybe becoming an entrepreneur or growing or creating a successful business, and ultimately with the goal of having what I call an awesome life, which is about physical growth, personal growth, and professional growth. Having a lot of money, having great health, having a lot of impact, having a lot of free time, having great relationships, developing the right skills that really empower you to succeed in all aspects of your life. That's my mission. That's my vision for the world. But one of the things I find is that a lot of people get kind of narrowly focused on making lots of money. Intellectually, we all understand that, being the richest guy in the graveyard is not an end in and of itself, that you don't get to take it with you, and ultimately you want to have this really more rich and fulfilling life than just a rich and full bank account. But at the same time, even though we all intellectually get that, emotionally and psychologically and behaviorally, people tend to get overly obsessive about the money piece very often. And so I've tried to really expand my mission and almost emphasize the more qualitative aspects of my mission, that I'm not here to make people rich. I'm here to help people have an awesome life. I just happen to believe, and my experience of this world says that not only having a good amount of money, but also being able to get your money in a way that doesn't drain all your time or drain all your energy, that's a component of having, a really amazing life. But great relationships, great family, feeling really fulfilled and having a great impact, that's a huge piece of it too. And so what I find is a lot of people think if they get their money right, then they can put all these other pieces in place, right? And we all hear these stories of, rich CEOs who wake up one day and they built this great business, but meanwhile they're getting divorced, their kids don't speak to them, they're 50 pounds overweight, and their doctor's putting them on blood pressure medication because they're basically about to keel over and die, right? I don't want to have content that creates or supports that view of the world. I would rather be helping people begin with the end in mind, which is, hey, maybe I am still working on generating more money or changing the way I get money, but at the same time, I'm also taking better care of myself. I'm also taking better care of the people I love. That's the essence of this conversation. My wife, again, I'm not just bringing her on because she's my wife. I'm bringing her on this show because she's one of the most amazing communicators. She's one of the most amazing caretakers, and she's one of the most amazing models of one of the most critical life skills that I've ever been exposed to, which is the ability to empathize. And her empathy, in the way it exudes and the way it spills over into all of her relationships, has ultimately resulted in a pretty unique dynamic in our home where we basically are like the go-to place for a small village of teenagers. There's literally 10 or 12 teens at our house all the time. And they're not just there hiding in the game room or hiding out in the backyard trying to be separate from the adults. I mean, they're in the living room, they're in the kitchen, they're cooking food, they're playing games, they're hanging out at the kitchen table with us, talking to us. Frankly, I think in a lot of ways we have a level of influence and connection with a lot of these teens that realistically, and this is by their own telling, they don't even have with their own parents. And that was built very strategically and intentionally by my wife, Jaqueline, through essentially this active empathy and this way of being and connecting in the world that, as parents, ultimately gives us what I think most parents deeply desire, which is connection and influence with our children, especially as they get older and approach adulthood. So it just seemed like a really, really amazing and relevant topic, assuming that you're not just listening to my show because you're obsessed with, becoming a millionaire as fast as possible, but rather you're a viewer or a listener of my show because you ultimately want to grow this really expansive and wonderful life. I can say, as a participant in my life, it wouldn't be nearly what it is without the influence of my wife. She's truly my better half. And she's taught me ultimately not just a lot about how to be happier in this world, but really a lot about how to be more financially successful in this world. When it comes to building businesses, when it comes to leading teams, when it comes to having an impact and creating content and building an audience, ultimately what you're really seeking is influence. In the modern world, influence and awareness, or I should say awareness is authority, authority is influence, influence is currency. You want to be rich? Develop influence. You want to develop influence? Develop the ability to connect with people. Nobody exhibits that better than my wife, and that's why I wanted to have her come on the show. So I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Thanks. Over 1,700 new millionaires are created every single day in the US alone, and more than double that across the globe. They're people from all walks of life, most of them people just like you and I. So the big question is this: how are so many people who didn't inherit money or have any special advantages overcoming the odds and becoming millionaires? That's the question, and this show will give you the answers. My name is Jeff Lerner, and welcome to Millionaire Secrets. Welcome to another episode of Millionaire Secrets. This is Jeff Lerner, your host. Always excited to be here and get to call it work when I really just do fun stuff and talk to cool people. And especially I mean that today because I'm getting to talk to the coolest of cool, my amazing wife, Jaqueline. Be kind of a special twist on the Millionaire Secrets format. And I'm stoked to be here, babe.
Thanks.
It's great to have you on the Millionaire Secrets show.
I'm excited too.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So this can be a little different because it would feel maybe a little weird to like interview you. Let's just talk.
Okay.
So we get a lot of questions, as you know, about like our family and our parenting and how we juggle everything and, how we've kind of built like a whole village around here of teens and kids and party. It's like a nonstop fun party. And I thought it'd be cool to just talk about that. And we get a lot of questions about it, so I know there's interest. Let's share, I guess. You've kind of driven it, so maybe I'll kind of let you start. Like, how did this whole thing happen? And by that, I mean, like, why are there always like 10 or more teenagers around our house? And
well, I just decided a long time ago that I wanted to do whatever I needed to do to have my kids home as much as possible. And I wanted them to always feel comfortable being at their home and not feel like they needed to go to somebody else's house to be themselves. And so from the time they were, little, I've just done little things and made an effort to make it so that they enjoy being here and their friends enjoy being here. And, it's the place that people want to hang out because they're going to be gone one day off on their own. And I just want to know them as much as possible before that.
That sounds like super simple. And I'm sure every parent would.
I feel like it's pretty simple.
Yeah. And I'm sure every parent's like, oh yeah, I want that. But like the reality is, and we don't just guess at this, we like hear it. Like not all parents have that type of bond with their kids, especially teens. And why is it not so simple?
I feel like some parents they feel like they always need to have the power in the relationship with their teenager, and the teenagers aren't treated as their equals. And so therefore it's always, how are you going to be yourself in front of your parents if you constantly feel like you're being judged for who you are? A lot of parents want their kids to be like them, or maybe not like them so much that they try to control every little thing that their teenager does, where my belief about it is I love to see the differences in my kids from us, like celebrate the differences, and let them be who they want to be. And so I think that's kind of what we've done is just we accept our kids and our friends for exactly who they are, and we don't try to control it.
I love that you just said our friends, our kids and our friends, and you were talking about, quote, their friends, but they really are. But they're our friends. Like, I think that was
our
like
best friends.
Yeah, I don't think that was like an awkward slip at all. Like, they really are our friends, and that's the thing I think that I've experienced in like talking to other parents and hearing the way other parents talk about their teens is like they're almost describing them like they're little science experiments or little projects, and not like these are actually just really interesting, cool people. And frankly, if you describe the difference between a teen's experience of the world and an adult's experience of the world, like adults are like, they've already decided what they believe. They've already like, they're really sort of non-experimental.
Probably most of them have decided what they believe based on their parents pushing them into it, or them going completely against their parents and not actually getting to just go decide on their own.
Yeah, totally. And like what they do every day is kind of the same. They've already like totally defined their groove in this world. Whereas like teens are still exploring and adventurous. And frankly, I actually think that sounds even more interesting.
Yeah, and I always felt like I always wanted to make my teenagers, feel like comfortable around me. But then when I started hanging out, the more they, came into their teen years and started bringing friends around, and then I'd go places with them and their friends, or I'd hear so many stories here from their friends, it just made me start realizing how adults actually treat teenagers, most adults. And I'm not saying all adults by any means, but I feel like they are looked down on a lot of the time, or kind of shrugged off and dismissed, and their opinions don't really get respected. And a lot of times that's what's happening at home. I mean, if you feel like that in your home, that's sad, by your own parents. Like, I just don't think they should be looked down on at all.
Yeah. And I don't think, again, that's like conjecture. I mean, that's literally what they report to us.
Yeah.
It's like, in general, that's how the world, I mean, you say it's not all adults, but it's definitely enough adults that's their primary experience of the world. It's like, we're lesser than.
And I think parents mean well, and parents are just doing, what they've learned from their parents or what the world has told them to do, which is, like, try to make your kids do this, or make your kids follow this path, or, make sure they have this plan. But it's not what makes your child want to stay around you or be friends with you. I mean, I want to be friends with my kids. I am friends with my kids. My teenagers are my best friends, Who doesn't want that?
Yeah, well, I think that, I mean, and it's, at least again, well, two things. One, my experience is it's not just parents. It's literally how the grown-up world treats teens. It's teachers, it's administrators, it's...
Just when you go out to restaurants...
Yeah, waiters.
Just, adults in general. And we've talked about this before, but I think it's one of the really hard things for people is it's an age where they're not little kids anymore, but they're not yet adults. And so how some adults treat them is super clunky, because they expect them to make adult decisions, but, and they get treated like they're stupid if they don't, but they're also not yet adults. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. And I think it's actually interesting because historically, for most of human history, like the line of crossing into adulthood was basically puberty. It was like 13, 14. I mean, I grew up Jewish. Like, we had this whole ceremony at 13 about becoming a man and becoming a mensch. And like in the Bible, like 13-year-old, well, like, you get married and have kids and own your own farm. And I just think the world now looks at a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old. I mean, at 18, oh, great, here's a gun, go fight a war.
Yeah.
But like at 17, you were stupid. Like, that makes no sense.
Yeah. And I also think that it's the age where, like, in their teen years, they're really, you can push religion and whatever on them when they're little kids. But like in their teen years, that's when they're really going to start thinking about things and deciding what they believe in, if they believe in anything. And I don't feel like that should be something that is pushed by their parents, because if you're pushed into believing something, you're not really believing in it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, let them go decide on their own. And that's one of the biggest things I've heard from a lot of different kids is, I don't believe this, but my parents make me, go to church anyway, or kind of force it upon them. And I mean, I do respect all parents, but I also don't think it's an effective way to parent your teen at all, because if that isn't what they believe, they're just pretending. Again, it's something else that they're pretending to believe in front of you, and they're not being themselves. Like everything to me comes back to I want to see who they really are. I want them to be comfortable with who they really are, and like I want to do the things that make that happen.
Yeah, and we live in a town that's kind of dominated by religion. But it's not just religion. It's religion, it's politics, it's values.
Yeah.
It's, we believe statements. And to me, it's like, we believe in, wearing purple shirts. And the kid's like, okay, well, I'll wear a purple shirt. You don't believe in wearing a purple shirt. You just do it to get your parents off your back.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that we've never wanted. We've never wanted our kids to be like, oh my gosh, like I can't wait to get out of there, so that I can, do this thing on my own, or like express myself in this way that I can't do at home. Like I want them to be able to do all of those things here. And I think that we've accepted our kids and all of their friends to the point where they all feel so comfortable being here that we've spent so much time that's how they've become like our good friends. Yeah,
it's really cool. I think about our group of friends, our group of teen friends. And like, I remember the lens of how I felt like the world looked at me and my friends as a teen. And it was like, they saw us as a group. They saw us very homogenous, like rebellious, volatile, unpredictable. If we walked into a store together, you could feel the store owner looking at us like, are they going to steal something? But the reality is, if there's a group of 8 teens, it's 8 completely different people.
Yeah.
That it's ridiculous to paint with the same brush. And, some of them are studious, some of them are quiet, some of them could care less about school, some of them want to go into sales, some of them see themselves as like an artist. Like it, and I think the tragedy of the way that the world treats teens is you're actually missing out on some of the most interesting people in the world, because people who haven't yet become rigid about who they are and what they believe have so much to offer for me as a grown-up to remind me to be fluid and open and not rigid.
Yeah.
Like they teach us more than I think we teach them in a lot of ways.
Oh, I respect their opinions on things pretty much more than I respect any adult opinion. And they are like grown-ups to me, but I think that they are that way because that's how we've treated them. We've always treated them as equals. We haven't treated them like they're beneath us in any way because we don't see them that way. And I think that's with most parents, they look at their teenagers, even, at 17 years old, it's still like, well, I'm the boss and you're going to do what I say. And it's like they just aren't willing to let go of that power.
Yeah, I think about, as this group kind of started to coalesce around our house, and they figured, I think the first realization was like, okay, this is at least a less threatening place than other places in my life. Like, I don't know if they were full on like, oh, this is safe, but at least it's a little warmer and more like inclusive. But then to see how, there's people that were at our house for months, and I thought, this is a quiet, boring person. They weren't. I think it was just unfathomable to them that they could actually open up and be themselves around grown-ups.
Yeah.
And it took months for some of them. But like now, there's a few kids in particular I'm thinking of that I won't name, but like I thought they were super quiet, almost like had a bad attitude. And now they're like the coolest,
it's just
funniest
because
people.
They're so used to getting dismissed or judged by adults that's how, when they started coming over, that's just what they expected from us. And until they felt the difference, they were just going to do the same thing that they did around other adults, was kind of put their head down and mind their own. And they probably didn't think that we cared to get to know them.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that I think is such a problem, is that a lot of adults say, oh, be their parent, not their friend. But with teenagers, their friends are their primary influence. So why would you not want to be their friend? Why would you not want to be friends with their friends and at the same time try to guide them?
Yeah, it is funny. And I was thinking we should probably talk about kind of how we came into this awareness. I'd love to pretend it's just because we're so smart and so evolved, but obviously we were like going through therapy and working with counseling, and this was shared with us.
Well, we've always done a lot of work to learn what we could, as much as we could learn about parenting. And so we've done parenting classes and we've read books. And I mean, to me, it was always a thing I wanted, but I always wanted to get as much information on how I could like tweak it or change it or do better as possible. And so I think that's what you and I did.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, it was like mind expanding for me to go to those classes and go and do that work. And also to do it with you, someone who was like so passionately committed to implementing the work that it wasn't just like, you know, intellectually interesting, but like you would take the work and actually go put it in practice and like build this thing. You created this world where these relationships could blossom. But I think the thing that that flipped the switch for me was when Steve, our therapist, said, like, once a kid turns maybe 14, parents are no longer the primary influence in their life. Yeah. Their friends are so much more influential on them than their parents.
No, which makes sense. All you care about at that age is your friends.
And I'm sure we can all remember that time in our life. And it's so weird because even with our good instincts and our good, intentions, I think we were still unclear on that until it was like laid out for us. Like, listen, if you try to parent the way society says to parent, you are veering off track from having influence on your kids.
Yeah. Well, for me, I always wanted it because my house was the house to be when I was growing up, and my parents made everybody feel so welcome and accepted. And when both my parents died, that's what so many people talked about is, how good they were to them when they were teenagers and how loved they felt at our house. And I was like, that's how I want us to be too. But I wanted to make it even bigger. And I feel like that's what we've done. I mean, we travel with our kids and their friends. We hang out with them basically every day. And I mean, I wouldn't want it any other way. Like in these years when they're about to be going out and doing their own thing, like I'm so excited for all of them. I'm so happy that I know their different personalities and I know their plans and I know their goals. And, I can't wait to like watch all of them go into the world.
Yeah, it's so funny because I've worked I'll share my own experience for like, I work a lot. I don't really have a ton of friends. I have really stimulating relationships with my work associates and with my family, and now with our gaggle of teens. Like I get all my needs met, but I think about like grown-up relationships where like, let's say you go to lunch with a grown-up every few months, just like catch up. How much really changes from lunch to lunch? It's like, well, I'm still not loving my job. I, got passed over for the promotion again. And I, things are good at home. And it's like, but with teenagers, there's like new exciting developments every month or two or three, it like changes. It's so interesting and
every
fun.
Month, like every week. Yeah.
It's like getting to be friends with a really cool TV show or something.
Yeah. And it is. I think it's so important to. I think the effort that we've always made when any of our kids or any of our kids' friends have been here is whatever music they want to listen to, whatever they want to talk about. Like we don't try to dictate any of that because we're not going to change anything about what they do. We're only going to change where they do it. I mean, they'll go in the next room and shut the door. The way we have it set up now, because we have accepted everybody so much, is they just they chill in here with us.
Mm-hmm.
They feel comfortable. They feel loved. Like I want them to feel loved. Like that's what's missing with so many of these kids is like just feeling accepted by adults and feeling like truly loved and not like they're being micromanaged and controlled about who they're going to be or who their parents want them to be.
Yeah, I think that's almost the irony and the challenge of being a parent or an adult who's trying to have influence on teens. And admittedly, you do want to have influence. You want to like impact and do good in the world, right? And you see these young people and you don't want, you're like, oh, I want to help and, whatever, guide, or at least to the extent they're interested in that. But the challenge is they're conditioned by the world to kind of shut down and pull back. And so then as an adult, your experience of them is like this moody, reserved, withdrawn person. And then you end up building, your relationship is based on kind of thinking that's who they are, but that's not actually who they are. Yeah. They're just that way because they haven't been exposed to an adult that'll take the time and show the interest to allow them to blossom in a non-threatening or a non-threatened way. And so it's kind of like the irony as an adult, this is what I learned because you blazed the trail and I was kind of like later to the party, is like, you have to give it time. You have to kind of love and care in a very patient and selfless way to eventually let them grow into who they actually are with you in relationship, because it's totally new to them that that's even possible with a grown-up.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exactly. And also they're not living in our time. Like this isn't, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like they have Snapchat, they have Instagram, they have smartphones. Like evolve with them. Don't try to keep them doing the things that you were doing when you were a teenager. Like the way that they know how to communicate is over text message, because that's honestly how most of them have been doing it. So like if that's how they know how to communicate, why do you not want to be able to communicate with them that way and just, or not give them a phone? I mean, I don't see that's a whole other topic, I guess, but.
Well, I'm not shy about going there. I was literally thinking as you were saying that, I was like, if you want to alienate a teen and shut down the potential for a really rich and wonderful relationship with them, start talking about how when I was a kid, we didn't play with these damn phones.
We would have been outside doing this, or we would have been doing that.
Up,
I mean,
dude.
Our kids are very balanced in what they do, and they've always had they've had a smartphone since they were 10.
Wait, but they have Snapchat. Surely they're toxic and headed off the rails.
Yes, so do we.
They're degenerate heroin
too.
users under a bridge somewhere because they have Snapchat, right? Oh yeah, we are too, right? Yeah, I mean, what about like even the other day, there was someone around who was like,
there was a group of kids here, and someone said, "Imagine your parents having Snapchat."
And we were like, well, we have a streak.
I'm on Snapchat like a lot of my day, because that's how I'm talking to my kids. We have a group chat with our kids and all of their friends. Mm-hmm. We literally know like what they're doing most of the time.
Where they are.
Who doesn't want that?
They're on Snap
They
Maps.
send us pictures of what they're eating, where they're eating at, who they're with.
Yeah, and so let's just share. I think we should maybe share to the world a little bit of intelligence from behind enemy lines. All those teens on Snapchat, they're not talking about where to buy guns and where to deal drugs, and they're like. Well,
I think
funny.
Most people's concern with that is like sending nudes and stuff like that, because it disappears. And so, but I don't really understand why they don't think they could get them on another format and then just delete them. Like Snapchat's this.
Like Instagram DMs, you can delete. Text messages, you can delete. Yeah, it's and I mean, I will say again,
I'd rather have lines of communication with all of them.
The Snapchat threads with the teens they're flipping hilarious.
Oh yeah.
It's like the highlight of my day is getting to check in.
It's just open lines of communication too. Like that's what I don't understand is why parents don't want that with their kids. If that's how their kids are going to be communicating, just get in on it.
Totally.
Be involved in your kid's life. Like know their favorite music, know what they truly want to do, not what you want them to do in the future. You know what I mean? Like
I mean,
that's all part of being their friend, though. I mean, like things like that about your friends, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much sums it up. Like, be their friend. It's so anathema to me that parents are like, no, don't be their friend, be their parent. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like, you want to have influence over a person who by definition is largely influenced by their friends. That's what a lot of parents are so frustrated about. They're like, you know, she has this friend who's influence, or they're just, all they care about is what their friends think. Well, like, read the intelligence then and be like, if I want to positively impact this person, maybe I should try being their friend.
Well, yeah. And also to me, being their parent is from day one, guiding them in the right direction, teaching them good principles, modeling being a loving, kind, good human, and like micromanaging all the little things along the way, like Snapchat, what music they listen to, what clothes they wear, you know, what they believe in. That stuff to me isn't parenting. Parenting, if you parent along the way really well and teach them the right things, like they're going to be okay.
Yeah, and by teach them the right things, I think it's important to say, model the right things.
Model the right things.
Don't tell them. I mean,
like lectures, like nobody's going to sit here and a lecture is going to get you nowhere. It's all little things that happen over years and years and years and years. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's not like a big talk that you sit down and have with them, you know, when they're in trouble for something.
Yeah, the big talk is, if there's a big talk called for, the answer isn't, at least, I mean, all this, we should probably say, this is all just our opinion, right? But yeah. I'll say my opinion is, if there's a big talk called for, whatever the issue is not going to be solved with a big talk. It's going to be like subtle behavioral changes from you, not from them, from you. Model differently, love differently, encourage, invite, accept, give it time, and watch how they grow.
Yes. And also, I'm not saying that nothing ever happens where you have to sit down and talk to your kid. I'm saying it's all the little things along the way that when it comes time to talk to your kid, you can actually have like a friend conversation about it, and they'll absorb it because it's not being in trouble by another adult.
Yeah, that's so true. You're building that relationship that gives you the context to have meaningful conversations when they're needed within a framework that's already established.
Yes.
Not we need to sit down and talk.
And this is how you need to be, and this is what you need to do, and these are our rules, and this is our house, and, you know, all that stuff that kind of chases them out.
Because, newsflash, it's their house too.
It's their house
They're
too.
literally not allowed to live anywhere else.
Yeah.
So we talked about parenting classes, right? I mean, I think so much of our foundational wisdom and hopefully value for the world is the fact that, like, we went to these classes, we spent years going to these classes, and it was like we got ready early. I mean, for context, we were going to these classes when we didn't have teens. We had like, 9 and, I think our two boys were like 9 and 10 when we started going to parenting. And we spent years getting ready for when they became teenagers, and we had to contend with this. So maybe let's go back to that and sort of mine some of that, because now that we've implemented, we've been a nice laboratory experiment, and I think we can conclusively say, like, this stuff really works. Yeah. But it was really, I mean, I remember being in that class, and like, you have a guy, our therapist, who was also teaching this open public class, and this guy was the head of a department within the Department of Child and Family Services here in Southern Utah for like 25 years.
Yeah.
He's not somebody that like doesn't know his stuff. And yet all these parents in the audience were like, they were always arguing with him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think, I actually think like my biggest aha from that I want people to hear and know is when he said, like, teenagers don't, like, not every teenager rebels. The reason, you know what I mean? And I was like, wait, so this is like in our control? And so that really, really, really made me decide, okay, these kids are going to be completely accepted by me. Mm-hmm. And we'll see what happens. And what's happened?
Yeah, we do not have rebellious teens, I'll say. And in fact, we have a large group of teens that, frankly, I'm not sure how they are at their house, but I know they come here and they're just like so sweet and wonderful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. That was a huge takeaway to realize that teenage rebellion is a signal from a teenager who's maybe not, I mean, because of life experience, they're not quite as emotionally sophisticated to like articulate their needs and just say, listen, parents, this psychological need of mine isn't being met appropriately. Like they don't have that vocabulary, so they're going to rebel. They're going to signal you through their actions, but that like you said, it is a mirror of you as a parent. And that's a hard pill for parents to swallow.
Yes, it is. But also, if you swallow the pill, you can change it. You can prevent it. You can.
So you're saying denial's not a strategy?
Denial's not a strategy on this one. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Or any.
It is. And I remember when he told us about, and this was within like a marital framework, he was talking about John Gottman, the guy that runs the Love Lab, and he's kind of, he wrote the book, like, I forget his book, 7 Rules of Making Marriage Work or whatever. Anyway, he's like the preeminent marriage scholar in the world, but his quote that has literally changed my life was, if you want to have influence over another person, first allow them to have influence over you.
Yes.
And that's a great formula in relationships, right?
I keep that in my mind all the time.
But yeah, map that to your kids.
Yeah, and also, why don't you want to let them have influence over you? I don't even know why it's a discussion or a question, or why do you not want them to feel like you're equals? That's the part I have such a hard time understanding.
Yeah, it's like if you wrote down on a piece of paper, like, who are the kinds of people that I want to have influence over me as a person? Would you write down, I mean, I would suggest you might write down, like, I want to be influenced by creative people, open-minded people who are, have value loyalty and care about their friends and, haven't decided what they believe in a way that's rigid and inflexible. And like, you basically list all these traits that frankly describe most teens more than they describe most adults.
Right.
As opposed to like, I want somebody who only does the same things every day, who's super rigid in what they believe, who, talks down to people. And I mean, it's like, if you wrote down the typical adult, you'd be like, I'm less interested in being friends with that person than the other person. But then as soon as you put the labels at the top of the columns, teen and adult, suddenly most adults will be like, oh wait, no.
Yeah.
I can't want to be friends with that person. But they're so damn cool. Yeah.
And also the other thing I keep in mind that when I'm having conversations with, our kids or other kids, just once in a while when there's something that, I maybe disagree with is, do you want to be close or do you want to be right or do you want to be close? I'd rather be close. I don't need to be right about what their future plans to be. I don't need to be right about what they should believe in. I don't need to be right about what music is good for them or they should listen to or whatever else.
Or whether or not they should have a smartphone.
Yeah, I want to be close.
Yeah, I mean, our therapist straight up told us that the single most consistent relationship dynamic that drives a wedge in relationships, I mean, obviously, marriage or money is, quote, the biggest cause of divorce. But in terms of a relationship dynamic, the way he articulated it was, that is the single biggest wedge that happens in relationships, is couples where either party is more concerned with being right than being close.
Right.
That is 100% true with teens. And yet,
yes,
most adults would be like, yeah, in my marriage, I need to work on tolerance and acceptance and, mutual synergy or whatever. But with their kids, it's about authority. It's about the flex.
Yeah, put as much effort in to being friends with them as you would with another one of your friends. You're not going to go to lunch with one of your friends and tell them how different they should be doing everything.
Yeah. Or it'll be definitely your last lunch with that friend.
Yeah, like just view it that way. View it as, okay, if I were sitting down to like eat a meal with a friend, how would I talk to them right now? And do that with your teenager. Mm-hmm. The whole dynamic shifts.
And I want to say too, and kind of speak to it is so fun to see who they would be, like who they become without you trying to control the process.
Yeah.
And how lame is it to say, well, let me see who he becomes while I do everything in my power to make sure he or she becomes exactly who I want them to become. Like, how is that fun?
Yeah, and also they all have it so much more figured out than a lot of adults give them credit for. They have goals, they have plans. I think a lot of the time they're just afraid to say what they really want to do because they're so afraid it'll be the wrong thing to their parents or society, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point for me, at least, to like recognize and realize is like younger people, let's face it, they're faster on the uptake with information than we are. Like we have these old, stodgy brains, right? They're super fast on the uptake with information. They're super nimble with technology. They actually, in many ways, and they're in an educational environment most of the time, as opposed to us who are in a work environment most of the time, or a family, like a home environment most of the time, where it's mostly about repeating things we already know how to do.
Right.
Whereas they're constantly having to learn new things they don't already know how to do.
Yeah.
So like they actually know, in a lot of ways, they know more than we do.
Yes.
And yet virtually no one looks at them that way.
Virtually no one.
And like I think
it's so sad.
Like even from like a cultural relevant standpoint, like I can just say for me as a business owner and a content creator who like tries to connect with the market and the world at large, I am thankful like on the daily for the influence that these younger people have had in my life. I mean, literally at the level of like my vernacular, or knowing how the social platforms work, or being able to think in like a culturally relevant way, and
right.
not just be that old 40-something guy that, anybody under 30 is going to like dismiss as having nothing to offer. Like adults would have, I think, a richer life. And I'll say this for myself, because like I said, I'm kind of late to the party. Like you've been blazing this trail for years. I mean, I've seen it. You've been like super involved. I'm going to pay you a bunch of compliments right now, but like you've been super involved. You've been the mom who's like, I'll give you boys a ride. And it's not, and it's genuinely because you actually want to spend time with them. And then lately I've been like, oh my gosh, this party's so much fun. Like, can I get in on this? Like, is there a cover charge? Can I come in? And I've built these relationships with these kids, and it's so cool. And I have so much of a more enjoyable and richer life. And I think in a lot of ways, I have a lot more to say. And I have a lot better understanding of like how to positively impact the world. Because if you want to see the world reflected in a crystal clear lens of like what's really going on out there, look at the perspectives of teens.
Ask a teenager.
Yeah.
100. Yeah.
And then you can actually make a difference because you know what you're targeting.
Yeah. And when you're asking them, make sure to respect them. And
wait, I have to respect them? What?
Yeah.
So, we're discussing, and by the way, this is awesome. Thank you for helping me like reinforce all the stuff that I know and believe, but want to live out and do even more of. But as we're talking through this and we're kind of reliving our past, like I realize how blessed we were that we happened to go to a really wonderful therapist, and we happened to set this intention early enough that we had a lot of runway to get it right, so to speak. And so I got to imagine there's at least somebody that's going to hear this and go, well, that's great for them because they, but my teenager is already 16, and for whatever reason, I've got this challenge. Maybe they are withdrawn, or they are pulled away, or they're always at their friend's house, and I've lost that connection. Is there a way to kind of clean it up after the fact and get things back on track? Like, do you have any thoughts?
I think that the first thing that you could do, and it's something I have always made a very conscious effort to do, is watch check your responses to things that they say. When it's not always a teaching moment. You know what I mean? Like, bite your tongue. Let them say or feel how they're feeling, and don't always use it as an opportunity to give a lecture or teach them something or tell them why that's not right. I mean, unless they're saying they're, I'm going to go out with my friends and like shoot up heroin or whatever, like pick your battles.
But even that, there's probably a way to approach it other than saying, no, the fuck you're not. Right? I mean, talk to them about why.
Well, yeah, but most of these kids we were talking about probably wouldn't never tell.
Yeah, you're right. That's kind of
it was a bad example.
A ludicrous conversation. But like, if you're like, that friend does drugs, and you're not going out with them.
But really, if your kids are sitting there talking to their friends or you, and you don't agree with something they say, let it go. That would be my number one first step advice.
So let them experience what it's like to have an opinion that they probably know you don't agree with.
Yeah.
And not become down on.
Not have a reaction.
Yeah.
A negative reaction.
I mean, I'll bet that
you don't
right
even
there.
have to have a positive reaction to it. Just don't have a reaction.
Yeah, and I know that one of the things we learned from Steve so much is like, if you want to dig into behavior or beliefs or whatever, having those conversations at neutral times where it doesn't feel like a reprimand or a correction. Like if they say something and you're like, I mean, it's okay to make a mental note and be like, yeah, I should probably check in with them on that and kind of dig into the feelings or what's really going on below it. But like, you don't have to do it right then.
Do it in a friend moment.
Yeah.
Like that's when I choose to talk to my kids about things that I've made mental notes on. It's like, when we're driving in the car, listening to music, or like it's at a neutral time, and it's really, they're going to take it a lot different than if they're constantly feeling like they're jumped on.
Yeah, and the other thing, I mean, and this has been hard for me. I've had to do this, especially with one of our sons, is like owning that if there's a problem, I'm part of it. And to go to them humbly, apologetically even, and own my part. Like, listen, I'm sorry I dealt with this that way. I was doing what I knew with what I knew, and I really want to do better. Like, let's just kind of work on it. Like, no pressure.
I don't have problems with our boys very often at all, but whenever I do, I totally try to put myself in their position and view it and think, like, how must they be feeling? What did I do that, like, hurt them, upset them, made them angry? Like, I want to know, because I 100% agree. Like, you're part of the problem.
Yeah, and actually, so I'm thinking about that parent in that situation who's, like, already got the teen that they feel like there's a challenge with. Like, ask them. Listen, son or daughter, I mean, newsflash, our relationship sucks. Or like, this is really awkward right now. Like, how did we get here so that we can do better?
Yeah. And also, like, yes, we've done a lot of therapy. We've done a lot of work. And I don't want to take away from that. But I didn't need to do any of that work to be able to be friends with my kids. Mm-hmm. I didn't. Like, I was really good friends with my parents. I had the same relationship with my parents that our kids have with us. And it was just in my nature to view them as one of my friends and not just as my child. Of course, like, I'm responsible for them. They're my kids. Like, I do want to teach them things. But, like, first and foremost, I want to be close to them, because nobody's going to learn anything from you if they don't have that relationship, that closeness with you anyway, right? Yeah. Like, they're going to just shrug you off as, no.
Yeah. I remember something Steve told us that again, there's been just like a few things that changed me forever. And one of them was when he just kind of said, well, it's really a pretty obvious thing, which is like, listen, every day, a teenager's primary experience of the world is a whole bunch of people trying to tell them who to be, how to be, what to think, what to learn, what to do. When they come home, let them come home to a place that is just this warm blanket of love and acceptance.
Be the safe place.
The safe place.
Yeah.
So, again, we witnessed, especially with that, and I mean, some of this philosophy, and also the whole, like, I mean, there's a whole other conversation around, like, not praising your kids, not trying to be the one who tells them that they're doing good, because then you can be the one who's also telling them that they're doing bad. And essentially what you're establishing is that, like, I get to control your opinion of yourself.
Exactly.
That was a big one. But in both of those cases, we heard so many parents kicking back to that, what seems like pretty obvious wisdom once you spell it out. Like, what do you think what's the block for so many people?
Control. They're scared of letting go of the control. And if you let go of praising and you let them decide things on their own and you let them make their own like life plans, and then you're not controlling that. And I mean, there's safety. People control for safety, right? People
control for safety. And why? I mean, you've espoused this for a while, right? I mean, you've like made social posts about it, and I assume, have you had conversations with other parents sort of either discussing or debating these ideas?
I've had other parents that have called me and asked me for advice on how to work out problems with their teenagers or how to be close to them because they've seen how we are with them.
What kind of responses do you get when you kind of spell this stuff out?
Either agreement and gratefulness, or they don't really want to hear it. And again, I think that's the letting go of control part.
What would your advice, forgive me, I don't love that term because nobody's necessarily asking for it. But then again, they are watching our episode, so maybe they're giving us permission to give advice. What would your advice be to parents on how to start, whether they already have a teen that they want to build a bridge to or they're trying to plan in advance, on how to start planting those seeds almost in themselves before they even take any actions?
I think that if parents and adults could adjust their thinking from control to influence, and influence is going to lead them to being their friend, which will actually influence them, then that's what would make the biggest difference.
Let that hang in the air for a minute. I think that's maybe a good note to end on.
Control to influence.
Control, from control to influence. That could be the name of this episode.
Okay.
Well, this has been amazing, babe. Now the world has a glimpse on what I get to do with so much of my life, which is have amazing conversations with an amazing person.
Thanks, baby. It was fun.
Thanks for being on the show.
Yep.
And to all you Millionaire Secrets listeners, thanks for participating here in a glimpse inside of our real life. And I hope this has been insightful and valuable. Don't forget, I've got this doesn't even feel like an episode, like a normal episode. So I'm forgetting all my talk track stuff, but don't forget that you can download a free copy of our book, The Millionaire Shortcut, which will teach you the fastest way to become a millionaire. You can get that at millionairesecrets.com. And make sure to subscribe to the show. If you're watching it on YouTube, we'd love if you'd subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on podcast, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Music, we're on Google Play, we're on all the major platforms. Make sure to subscribe there as well. And thanks again so much for listening. You are the best part of the Millionaire Secrets show. Thank you for watching Millionaire Secrets. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and leave us a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you know whenever we release a new episode. Also, if you want to learn the fastest way to become a millionaire in the new economy, click the link in the description below to claim your free copy of my book, The Millionaire Shortcut. And don't forget, Millionaire Secrets is available on all the major podcast platforms as well. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you can listen on the go. Thanks for watching.